Well, hello everybody! Welcome back to G-Bear's Off-Grid Ways, a homestead in the desert. And today, because I couldn't come out with the winds yesterday, anyway, I'm going to answer some questions. And I'm going to start with Denise, because Denise had quite a few questions. She was binge watching my videos and nailing me with short novels of questions. So we're going to get to that. She says that she's good at framing and other things, but electricity is not one of her fortes. So not even a three-tay. It's not a forte, it's not a three-tay. Okay, so what are we going to do? Oh, I'm going to find something that can reach behind me and scratch my shoulder because a fly just landed on me. Yeah, the bugs are out big time. Okay, so anyway, some of the questions from Denise. Talking about wire gauge and length. 12 gauge, 10 gauge, how far can you run them? I did ask back, but I didn't get an answer. Talking DC or AC? Remember, in DC, you want to use stranded wire. In AC, you use solid wire. Okay? So, in DC, 12 gauge wire is the basics of what most solar panel companies supply you with for solar panels. Okay, those would be all 12 gauge coming out of the back of your panel. Now, and you're going to combine a bunch of panels together and then run them a distance into your controller. You want to get a little bit larger gauge than that, so you go with 10 gauge. And that's what I did here. This is 10 gauge going in. Okay, the same thing with over here. This is 12 gauge coming off the panels, and this is 10 gauge going in. Now, if you buy just black, big roll of black, you can get some red shrink tube and put it on the positive cables so you can quickly tell which one is which when you come out to look at them. All right, that's a little trick. Now, on the panels, normally the positive will be the smaller connector, the one that has the one that people confuse and call the male, which is actually the female, because it's not the plastic they're talking about, it's the little metal piece that's inside. And on this little one, the plastic piece is the little side, and then the one that connects to it is the larger side, but the metals that are inside them are opposites. Okay, I hope I didn't confuse you with that. But just remember, out of the backs of your panels, they're usually all marked, and they'll say positive or negative, whatever. But they also should say on most of them, do not connect or disconnect under load. So now that the sun is beating on these, it would not be a good idea for me to make any disconnections here and reconnections. The surges could do damage to the panels and to the controllers, and that's how diodes get blown. And that's why you can buy used panels that they say don't work. Now, the only reason they don't work is because somebody connected or disconnected them under load and blew the diodes out. So you go underneath these things and you open up the junction box like that, and you replace the diodes, and then you got a new panel. All right, so back to the wire gauge. So 12 gauge coming off the panels. When you're going to combine a bunch of them together to go into your controller, you upgrade that from the panel area to the controller, or upgrade that to 10 gauge. Remember, smaller the number, larger the wire. Okay, now if these panels were going to be way out there in the field, I'd probably go to upgrade them to 8 gauge to carry it. Now, how do you know which gauge wire to use? Well, for most parts, it's how many amps it's going to carry. Okay? The lower the amps, the smaller the wire can be. So, for my turbine way up there, it comes down the pole, goes into the battery room, and goes to my bridge rectifier. So I ran 10 gauge from up there because the that unit can put out 60 to 80 amps, and I've seen 85, 86 amps come out of that thing. So I wanted something that would be able to handle that amperage. So I went with 10 gauge. 12 gauge wouldn't do it. All right. So the higher your amp requirements, the larger the wire has to be. So it's not whether what you're going to put in a cabin, like if you're going to put electrical outlets in a cabin, you're normally going to go with 12 gauge run on those. That's AC current, alternating current. You're going to use THHN solid or Romex, or like I said, if you're going to be out in the desert, mountains, or anything like that, mice and critters are a big problem with chewing wires, even with your cars and that stuff. So you want to protect from that. So in your cabin, when you're building your cabin, use the MC cable. It's got like a metal flex, an aluminum flex wrapped around the wiring so that the critters can't get to it. And don't use plastic electrical boxes, even though they're cheaper and you might want to. The critters will chew right through the box and then get to your wires. So you want to use steel boxes when you're doing that stuff. All right. So remember, for your wiring, it's the amount of amps you're going to use. Now, another part of her question was, how do you know when to use 15 amp, 20 amp, 30 amp, etc.? Okay. For the most part, for all household electricity, for the 95% of your household electricity, it'll be 15 amp or 20 amp. 15 amp would be the breakers that have the blue switch on them. 15 amp is usually used for lighting, and lighting only. And that includes switched lighting. So if you're going to put a switched outlet in your cabin so that you can put a table lamp there and operate it from the switch on the wall, then you could use 15 gauge or 15 amp on that. But you could also use 14 gauge wire because it's lighting. All right. You use your 12 gauge for all your 20 amps. Your 20 amps would be the ones that have the red or a black switch, and it would say 20 on the little switch, right on the switch itself. Okay, so for those 20 amp, you want to use 12 gauge wire, solid wire, and that'd be for all your electrical outlets. Okay, how many outlets can you put on a run? Again, that's where the little meter I showed you, called a kilowatt, comes in. You would take the number of watts that you need to run on a single circuit, and then you would divide that by 120, and that'll tell you how many amps is going to be required to run everything on that circuit. Now, if it exceeds 15 to 17 amps, if it exceeds that, you can still probably use a 20 amp breaker, but you might want to just split it to a second circuit. A 20 amp circuit is good, guaranteed good, for up to 75% of the amount of stuff that's going to plug into it. 75% of 20 amps is 15 amps. So that's how you would want to rate that. Now, she asked about separate circuits for certain items in the cabin or the house. Yes. Okay, for air conditioning, window air conditioners, separate outlet. Okay, don't try to put 2 window air conditioners on 120 amp outlet. You'll be running to the breaker box and flipping breakers most of your life, so don't do that. Refrigerator, separate circuit, only the refrigerator on that circuit. Microwave, only the microwave on its own circuit. That's it, nothing else on there. Okay, what's that mean? Well, that means that you're looking at all your high wattage, high amperage draws equipment, and that's again where the, oh, look at that little dust devil just popped up right there. Huh. So yeah, the thing you're looking for is you want to take your watt meter and check to see what uses so much power and put those on separate circuits if you can. And that's something that you want to check out before you actually start building. Plan on what you're going to have in what room, because that makes a difference of how many circuits you're going to have, so you know how many on your electrical panel to buy how many breakers will go into that panel. All right, now remember I told you about 120 240 in voltage. Okay, you're going to have some items that require 240, so make sure you remember that that's going to take 2 breaker spaces in your panel. So that cuts down 2 spaces out of the number of circuits you can run. And that's an important thing. You want to make sure that you plan that stuff out ahead of time. Okay, other things. If you're planning on having a instant cooker, one of those big air fryer, deep fryer, etc. type cooking units in your kitchen, you're probably going to want to put a separate circuit for that. Okay, that should cover it. TVs don't use a lot of power. Wall lamps, table lamps, things like that, they don't use a lot of power. And get away from regular incandescent bulbs and go to LED bulbs, and it uses less power anyway. All right, and next, GFCIs. She knew that you could put them near wet locations is important, but you can only have 1 GFI in a circuit. You can't put more than 1 GFI in the same circuit. So if you're running a circuit in your kitchen just for counter appliances like a mixer, a blender, things like that, remember that if you're going to get near the kitchen sink, you need a GFI to cover those outlets. Now, GFIs are designed so that on the backs of them, where you look where they connect, and I should have had one of those with me so I could show it to you while I'm talking, but if anybody wants to know, let me know and I'll get one and put it in the next video. On the backs of them, it says line and load. So a hot and a neutral say line, and a hot and a neutral say load. Okay, the line is the power coming into the GFI. Load, you can run that downstream to 4 or 5 or 6 other regular electrical outlets, just regular receptacles, and then you put a little sticker that comes with the GFCI on that one that says it's GFCI protected. Now, any one of those down the line of that circuit, if there's a ground fault, it will pop the GFCI at the number 1 location. So you'd have to go reset it back there. Another thing is if you're going to put outdoor receptacles, like out here, I'm going to end up with a deck, and I have outdoor receptacle there. I have one around this side, one around the other side. Okay, of course you might want to plug in something outside, so you want to have an electrical receptacle out by your patio or something like that. If it's outdoors, it has to be GFCI protected. Okay, and it should be 2 feet off the ground. That's in case there's floodwaters. If there's 2 feet of floodwaters coming through this place, I'm in big trouble. Oh, the winds are coming up again. I hope they're not bothering you too much. Let me see if I can move around the cabin here and block it. Oh yeah, it's much calmer over here. All right. So outdoors and wet locations, GFCI. Where else? In a garage. You have a garage, your outlets in the garage should be GFCI protected. Remember, it only needs one GFCI to run regular outlets that are all running off the load side of it will all be protected in the garage. So if you're going to have 4 or 5 different receptacles in the garage, you have one GFCI set on one easy to access wall, usually right by the door that lets you into the house. And if the circuit pops, you can go over to that GFCI and reset it. In some houses, they built it with the GFCI in the garage, also covered the bathrooms. And even a 2-story house with 2.5 baths would be on the same GFCI as the garage. Things have changed since I was in the business, so I haven't kept up with it, so that might have changed. I never thought it was a good idea anyway, because if you pop the circuit in your upstairs bathroom, you got to go all the way down to the garage to reset it. If you didn't want to put it inside right next to the sink, you could put it out in the hallway just outside of the bathroom. All right, now the another question, can you put your electrical outlets that are inside your house or cabin, can you put them higher off the ground than like 12 or 16 inches? Yes, you can put them all the way up by the ceiling if you want, which some places do, because you plan where you're going to be hanging your big screen TV or your regular TV, and you don't want to see a wire running down the wall. So up where that thing is going to hang, you put an electrical outlet. And you also put a cable junction block so that you can connect an antenna or your cable TV or whatever behind the TV, and you don't have wires hanging down, and you don't have to put one of those weather strips or anything like that down the wall to hide wiring. So yeah, put them up as high as you want. The only reason that people put them down low in new houses is so that they can be hidden behind furniture. So if you have a couch sitting up against the wall with an end table on each side of the couch, the wires run behind the couch and plug in. Nobody sees the wiring. It's hidden. Okay, so that's all that matters. So outdoors, you want to keep them up a little bit higher, because if you have flooding, you don't want those things going underwater and charging the water. But they should be GFCI anyway, and if they did go underwater, it would pop the GFCI and the circuit would go dead. All right, let's see if I got anything else on this. Well, it looks like I pretty much covered it. How long have I gone here? Wow, 19 minutes. Okay, if there's any other questions on electricity, let me know. Now, I do have a product to review, and I've been trying to figure out how to do that. And if the winds are here, I can't do it, because I have to get on a ladder in order to install the item. And if I do get on a ladder in the wind, I could end up getting off the ladder in the wind, and I don't want to do that. So I've been holding off on that just because of winds every afternoon. and I might just have to get up in the morning and shoot half the video and then shoot the rest of it at night. Or I may wait till just before dark. If it's not too windy out here, I'll show you the product inside the cabin. Then I'll go outside and install it, because I can't hold a camera, climb a ladder, and do an install all at the same time. It's just too dangerous. And I don't have anybody else to do camera work for me. So I may do it that way. We'll see. It won't take very long to install. It's a very easy thing. And I'll show you how the install is done. But I won't be able to video while I'm doing it. Other than that, thanks for joining me. Don't forget your thumbs ups, and don't forget to share and subscribe. Keep those subscriptions coming up, people. Remember, when I get to 3 7s in my subscriptions, that'll be 7770. When I get up that high, we're going to have a big giveaway. So let's get it up there. This is G Bear signing off.